Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the HR Cartel podcast. I'm your host, Tim Dive. What have we got going on right now? There is a war against businesses. I'm telling you now, not just a war in the Middle East or a global war, some might have you believe. It is a war against businesses. We've got the ATO and the Fair Work Ombudsman teaming up and going after all of your contracting arrangements. That's right. If you've got a contractor, an offshore worker, a VA, a local person who's a sole trader, they're coming after you, right? They've released a joint press release today, so we can talk more about that. But let's just make this clear. If you're in building and construction, if you're in road transport, so if you're a driver or you're a courier or something like that, let's say if you're in cleaning, if you're in IT, if you're in road freight, these sort of industries, you're under the spotlight, not just from the Ombudsman, but the ATO as well. We'll talk more about that, right, about sham contracting, because we did a webinar not long ago. I might even put the link up for that webinar in these show notes so you can check it out. An hour long of myself and one of our other senior HR consultants here at the HR Cartel talking about how you do your contracting arrangements, how to avoid your sham contracting risk and all that sort of stuff, right? But this is new. The ATO is coming after you as well. So we'll talk about that. But that's not all we've got going on, right? We've got a global oil restrictions happening from this war in the Middle East. So what has that done? It's exposed us massively in our oil industry here in Australia. We've got massive oil reserves here. I don't know if you know this, right? I used to work for a company called Santos, Australia's probably Australia's largest oil and gas business. I used to work for them, and I spent some time going down to South Australia, and there's a basin down there full of oil. Full of it. We've got enough oil in Australia here ourselves to supply what we need easily, right? There's no problem about that. While I was working with a company called Wood Group years ago, I had to unfortunately go and shut down some of those operations in places like Caltex, down the Kurnell refinery down in Sydney. I've also worked at the Brisbane refinery at Lytton. That's still going, right? That's still operating there. But our weaknesses have been exposed. This country, we've been pulling back on that sort of stuff for a very long time, and it's a massive problem. So I'd say, let's look at those industries as potential growth sectors, because this ridiculous claims about oil and gas and mining and all sort of stuff destroying the environment and pushing global warming through the roof, and we're at fault for it and that sort of stuff. It's just bullshit. Let's be honest, it's just bullshit. And all we've done is offshore that work elsewhere. We've offshored it to the Middle East, to Asia, to the Americas. We've offshored it elsewhere, right? Now, that work is still happening. That refining is still happening. We're still consuming all that ourselves. We're just buying it from elsewhere. And now when there's a big restriction, we're buggered, right? So it's dumb. It's just absolutely dumb. And hopefully, if anything comes out of the drama of the war going on right now in terms of energy crisis here, these lefties and these far left socialists get the picture. They get the hint. They just don't understand how the world works. But let's look at that as an industry, as a potential growth industry now with refining and importing and that sort of stuff. Okay, AI is driving administrators, software engineers, these sorts of people out of their jobs, out of their employment. Right. So we'll talk about that. Atlassian's made a whole bunch of people redundant, which is no surprise. But we'll talk more about that. Unions, the ALP being the Australian Labor Party, the government, right, and the Fair Work Commission, all are pushing towards making people work from home. Victorian Labor Party as well, right? So let's have a look at that. Unions are demanding that we get even more productivity damaging laws passed to protect that, what they say, protect workers, right? Dumb, again, really dumb stuff, because we'll talk about why it's dumb. And it's going to strangle more and more businesses and make it even more difficult for businesses to employ people and keep people employed, right? Well, we will talk about that and what I mean by that. So to wrap that up, let's summarize that. If you are in building and construction and cleaning, road freight, if you're a courier, if you're an industry like that, the ATO and the Fair Work Ombudsman are coming after your contracting arrangements. Be very careful. the other bits. AI is killing jobs. Unions are killing employers. And the ALP, the Fair Work Commission, and unions want you all to work from home and stay there and not come out of your houses. Let's talk about all that today. Before that, though, right? I want to say thank you to everyone who keeps on coming back. We appreciate it. We see you. Please do it again, okay? Click share, like, follow, subscribe, whatever it says on the podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's how we reach more people. Who are we trying to reach? We're trying to reach smaller business employers. So not just micro and small and family businesses. We're talking about smaller employers, 0 to 200 employees. These are the businesses that are most at risk in Australia right now, and our voice is there to help them and explore these things underlying the government rhetoric, right? So thank you to those who have clicked follow and that sort of thing. Do me a favor. I want to ask one favor. If you're on Apple, if you're on Spotify, or you see us on YouTube, give us a like, give us a rating, give us 5 stars if you want to, and give us a comment as well. Give us some feedback and some commentary and that sort of thing. Don't leave it just up for the haters, right? I don't care about haters. In fact, I love it because they give us more traction, really. Way more than the lovers do. So I like them, right? But let's not just let haters put comments on our stuff. We do find it funny, and it is good fun. But here's a message to you out there as well. If you are coming to this podcast thinking that it's a very soft, fluffy, warm, it's going to make you feel good HR podcast, switch off. Go elsewhere. It's not that, right? We're also not about making people feel bad either. We're not about trying to make people feel silly and ridiculous and trying to ridicule companies or unions or anything like that as well, though that may come across sometimes, right? We're real. We're a real voice. We're not influenced by the politically correct HR occupation and industry. Not at all. We're not influenced by the big tier ones that own the HR profession, where you have to abide by a certain type of thought process in HR, otherwise you're out the door. That's not us. If you're coming to this podcast expecting to walk away feeling good, warm and cozy, like you just had a big hug from mum, it ain't me. I'm sorry to tell you, you ain't getting it. But if you're here to talk about real things affecting workplaces and hear about real perspectives from smaller companies out there who are the most at risk and the most important employers in Australia, well, you're at the right place. Here you are. If you know someone in one of those businesses, share this with them. They need to hear it, and they need to tell us what they think as well, right? This is a voice that you don't hear much in the HR world, and it's much needed. So let's get on with it, shall we? Let's get on with it. The very first thing, so today being Friday the 13th of March, that's an interesting date, Friday the 13th for the ATO and the Fair Work Ombudsman to put out a joint press release telling us they're going to come after all of our contractors, right? So that full press release, as I said, I'll put it as a show link to this podcast. But here's what's happening, right? The Fair Work Ombudsman are targeting road transport, so couriers, drivers, that sort of thing, and the building and construction sector. Let me tell you a little bit about the building and construction sector. Right? It's a horrible place to be, especially right now. And we're talking about big construction sites, right? I don't want to offend anyone who's in construction and loves construction. Let me tell you, I was in construction for 12 to 15 years myself, labouring, plastering, frames and trusses, high-rises, civil projects, just domestic construction, all sorts of things, landscaping, you name it, right? If you work in that sector, you've probably done it all. Right? And I've been there, right? So I'm not shitting on the industry, but the union movement has gone way too far for way too long. I have never joined the CFMEU, and I always said to them, I'm never joining them when I was employed and I was on site there, and they made everyone's lives hell. They haven't stopped, right? But they're starting to be repealed now. They're starting to knock the kneecaps out of that union right now, right? And it's about time, okay? But that is the industry, right? Now, this Labor Party who is in power, right? Now, let me make this point clear, right? The right side of politics, being in Australia, the coalition, or the Liberals. If you're elsewhere in the world, and we got our listeners in Canada and America as well. But Liberals here means the right side of politics, right? Liberals for you guys means the other side. But it's the right side of politics has its donate. It's people who make donations, it's companies who make donations, and lobbyists and that sort of thing as well, right? So let's just acknowledge that. But let's talk about the left, right? Because the left takes their money from the union movement. The union movement is the money collecting arm of the Labor government, especially when the Labor government is not in power. In order to get in power, that party relies heavily on the union movement and heavily on the CFMEU specifically. Hundreds of millions of dollars change hands, right? Now, money also goes to the union movement and the CFMEU specifically via superannuation companies as payment for director fees. Yes, you heard it. The union are directors of superannuation funds. They control superannuation funds as well, right? So money goes, and they make these approvals, right? They push money from superannuation companies into union bank accounts because super companies can't make donations to political parties, but the union can, right? So more money goes back to the Labor Party via that stream as well. Now, I can go on and on and on and on about how this all works, right? But suffice to say, it is a complete corrupt model. It's illegal though, so I'm not saying this is all the legal stuff going on, although we know there is, right? But the practice of where the Australian Labor Party gets their money from is not illegal. It's just immoral, I would say. But that's the nature of it. Now, the construction industry is heavily impacted by these practices. You know what a CFMU gets so wrong and act so badly for so long and don't get pulled up? Because the executives, the higher ups, the very top of our country's executive models are funneling millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars back to the Labor Party, right? So, of course, underneath them at the lower levels, these minor, what they call, or what we see as minor, breaches of law or immoral acts, they just fester, right? It festers like you wouldn't believe. Where it's rotten at the top and rotten decisions are being made in order to funnel money back to a political party, you bet your bottom dollar it's rotten all the way through, right? That is the construction industry. Now, the people who work in that industry often want to have, and especially nowadays, they want to be contractors. Lots and lots of them want to be sole traders, contractors. Right? They don't want to be an employee. They want the right to be able to pick and choose where they work. They want to say no to certain things. They don't want to be hassled by a union delegate every time they go to a site. But they still are, right? But that's beside the point. They do want to be contractors. So when these companies out there are trying to staff their projects and they just can't staff the projects, they've got people saying, oh, I'll be a contractor, right? You've got the CFMEU and unions demanding that these companies sign EBAs, enterprise bargaining agreements, and massive tier one builders forcing those companies to sign enterprise bargaining agreements with conditions in there that say the union controls the contractors coming on site and the labour hire guys coming on site, right? So it's a big, tight bottleneck there, and the union is the problem. These, like I said, these employees, these workers don't want to be in that world. They want to be contractors. Now, the Fair Work Ombudsman will have you believe that these companies tell people I'm going to sack you and I'm going to rehire you as a contractor and you've got no choice. The Fair Work Ombudsman will have you believe that the company is doing this in order to get around paying employee entitlements. The Fair Work Ombudsman and the ATO will have you believe that the companies, the employers are doing this to get around paying superannuation entitlements. Don't buy the hype. It's not true, right? In order to staff these projects, you need contractors. The workers that have the skills want to be sole traders and contractors. They want the taxation benefit, right? Now, of course, it upsets the government. You're not getting as much tax. It's not tax evasion, it's tax minimisation, right? Let's go flash back to that famous Kerry Packer clip where he fronted a Senate inquiry, I think it was, and he spoke about this in his own practices, right? But that's the overwhelming majority of what's happening here. Yes, there are some bad actors, absolutely. I'll never say there are no bad actors, but this crucifixion of employers at the hands of left-leaning and socialist regulators in our country has to stop, because this is why companies have got their backs to the wall and especially the construction sector, tens of thousands of those companies have shut their doors, right? Because they just can't operate with this much red tape, with this many rules, this many penalties. Now, what is the penalties, right? These ombudsman, the Fair Work Ombudsman anyway, will sting you about 20 grand almost as a penalty for an individual. If you're a small business with less than 15 staff, they're going to hit you for 100 grand. If you've got more than that, you're talking about a $500,000 penalty, or 3 times any sort of underpayment amounts as a result of sham contracting, right? The ATO will hit you for PAYG withholding penalties, superannuation penalties, and all sorts of things. And they're looking at data, right? They've got this single touch payroll technology that they've deployed the last few years. They're matching data across sectors. That's the ATO, right? They're finding these tax records. They're looking for them. And like I said before, the industries they're trying to hit are businesses in freight, construction, cleaning, couriers, IT, security, building and construction, you name it, all those industries, they're watching. They're matching invoices. They're matching transactions, right? So be warned. Hear me now. Be warned, okay? Like I said, we did a webinar not long ago, just a couple of weeks ago. I'll put that a link to that webinar in the show notes. Do me a favor. Reach out to the HR Cartel. Watch that webinar and reach out to us, right? www.hrcartel.com. Go to contact us or give us a call, 075651 0066. You'll get to our advice team by calling that number. And if you've got contractors, you need to sharpen this shit up, right? Your contracting agreements need to be in place. Though these days, they're not worth the paper they're written on after you get going. After you get going, it's all about how have you managed these people? What instructions have you given them? What text messages? What emails? How have you communicated? How have you given them scopes of work? How are they invoicing you? All this sort of stuff comes into play now, right? I don't know if you remember, but a couple of years ago, there was those 2 cases that went into the High Court, personnel contracting and the Jamset cases, I believe it was. Those High Court decisions, the High Court in Australia said this is ridiculous. If they're a contractor, the contract says they're a contractor, you're a contractor. We all breathed a massive sigh of relief. And for a couple of years there, the advice going to employers was, make them a contractor, use contractors, right? Now, of course, the ALP wins power in 2022, and they don't like it because their union friends, they can't really do much with contracting arrangements, right? They don't want small business. Unions hate small business. They want you all to be employed under one massive, big socialist umbrella, and they can access all of you and control you by talking to one employer. That's the utopia for the union movement, right? They don't like the smaller employers. But the High Court rulings back then, a couple of years back, made it very, very clear. The Labor government winning in 2022, they rewrote the legislation, Section 15AA. Look at this webinar, we'll explain this, right? But they named those 2 cases specifically in that new piece of law, so we can't use them as case law to protect ourselves against the confusing and muddled mess of contractor legislation. So they've intentionally made it confusing with the purpose of scaring you away from using them, right? 2026 is the year these regulators crack down and come after you. Whoa, what a rant. That was a good one. Look, this global oil restrictions are happening. We're seeing, petrol prices around the country. This is not anything to do with IR, of course, but I'm going to talk about it anyway because I worked in this sector for a little bit. This is my background, right, in terms of my industrial relations and HR background. I came through the mining and resources sector, pretty much civil engineering, that sort of thing as well. I had some exposure to major projects, but primarily mining and oil and gas. Now, I've worked at oil refineries in Australia. I've shut down operations in oil refineries in Australia because, the laws, the industries, the governments went that way. What a mess and what a ridiculous decision to make. I worked for a company called Santos. Santos is Australia's largest oil and gas producer. I'd say that they had the GLNG project, which is that big LNG project where we had to bring people from Oman and Iran and everywhere to come here, with the knowledge to build this project, right? Korean stakeholders, Japanese stakeholders were part of it. It was a massive project. But that was just coal seam gas. So CSG, coal seam gas to LNG and then exported offshore, right? So we've got oil here. Down in South Australia, there's a massive, massive deposit. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be just refining all the oil that we need ourselves. There's no reason why, right? But we do import our oil. So this is why we're seeing this restriction of oil supply drive prices up. So what's going to happen here? We've got industries that have blown up, right? But the only reason why they're blown up, and I'm talking about clean energy industries here, the only reason they're blown up is because of government subsidies, right? Government has subsidized the development of an entire sector, green energy or clean energy, call it whatever you want, based on what I think is a lie, which is that human beings, us, have caused global warming. Now, that's a debate for another day, right? Global warming has always been here. I'm not a denier. It is real. It's always been here, right? We've had ice ages and in and out of ice ages the entire existence of the Earth, of the planet. Now, are we having an impact? Sure, we might be, but we aren't the cause of global warming. However, an entire industry has been built on the back of that myth. And we are where we are today, regardless of anything surrounding that, any narratives going around, they don't matter. We are where we are today. And where we are today is extremely exposed, massively exposed, and for no good reason, right? We haven't stopped the production of oil, the use of oil. We haven't stopped the production or use of coal in smelters or iron ore or anything at all. All we've done is what the activity we did here in Australia, we've offshored it now to dirtier nations with less regulations, with less care for the environment. So we've probably, in a net effect, done much worse than we could have if we just had have kept on, producing this stuff here. Nonetheless, what do we do now, right? As long as we've got this far left socialist government, I'm not sure that they're going to change their ways or they can change their ways. I think they're too scared to anyway, even though they do know that they have to do some sort of changes permanently, not just temporarily. Chris Bowen, the minister that is a bit of a laughingstock, to his credit, has loosened regulation on the quality of oil being used for petrol. So that means that what supply we have here in Australia can be used to cover some sort of shortage we may have, right? It's only a small amount, so it's not going to do much. But what we see here is, I'll give some praise, some common sense. We've got a government that supports an ally in a global situation who probably wouldn't have. And we've got a far left green energy obsessed government that has loosened regulations, and not really of their own free will. They've been really pressured to do it, but at least they've done it. How quickly they've done it and how they got to their conclusion they had to do it is another story. But that tells us that they know that something has to change, right? So does this mean that the oil refineries and our oil and surrounding sectors will see a boost again? I certainly hope so. I certainly do. And if you're out there in those sectors, I think you would too. Anyone who wants to get back to a good resources industry job, because tens of thousands have been lost in that sector. Maybe this is a sign of some common sense coming back. Maybe this is a sign that we're going to realise as a country we've gone too far in one way, and we need, for our own security, we need to pull it back a bit, right? And we need these sectors to be strong. Otherwise, we're exposed in a massive, massive way. I think Australians don't realise how exposed our country really is in wartime. I really don't believe that they understand how exposed we are and how easy it is to take us. That's a conversation for another day, maybe at the pub with someone. Let's talk about the next thing here, right? All these things building up on employers. AI is driving developers, software engineers, and admins out of work. It's happening. Okay. Now, I've got a very staunch view on AI and how I use AI in our business. AI does not service people. It doesn't do it. We service people. We talk to people. Person-to-person company, the HR Cartel. No one will receive a customer-facing service from an AI bot in my company ever. That's not ever going to happen. But I'm not going to give away my secrets because I know my competitors are listening to this podcast. I know you're out there. I know you're listening, right? So I'm not going to tell you what I'm doing, but we are adopting it, and I can see. I've been deep in AI the last few weeks trying to figure things out and learning all about it and deploying it, right? And I know how we will deploy it, and I can see how it's going to impact a lot of companies out there. Larger businesses, guess what? You aren't anywhere near as nimble as we small folk, and we're going to catch up to you in a very big way. That's my warning to you. It's too difficult for these massive businesses that are already out there to turn on a dime to adjust at the speed they need to be able to adopt this technology in the best way possible. Right? This is the playing field is going to be balanced out here. It's going to be far less about the volume and the way things get done. It's going to be all about the quality of products, the quality of service. It's not going to be about the messaging anymore, the packaging up, the 3-piece suit, BDM, that sort of stuff. It's not going to be about that stuff anymore. All that stuff is going to be reduced down to a level playing field with the technology that's coming along, and it's all going to be about the quality of your product and service. I'm very happy. I, for one, am very happy to be playing in that game, right? Many of our competitors out there won't be. But AI, nonetheless, is taking jobs away. We've seen it last year and cut, 1,600 jobs, I think, which is developers, software engineers, that sort of thing, right? Now, the next thing is that the unions are demanding that there be some sort of compensation for admins and that sort of thing, clerical workers that lose their job due to AI adoption by companies. Let's talk about that for a second, shall we? For as long as I can remember, I'm 44 years old. Now, for as long as I can remember, and that's, I mean, I'm not young. I'm also not overly aged, I don't think. But for a good 30 years, I've paid attention to industrial relations, right? The last 20 years especially, for decades. I'm telling you, for decades, I know firsthand, just raising the word productivity in presence of union delegates and union heads would get nothing but, shit thrown back at you, right? Rolling their eyes, laughing at you, making jokes about it. They were never, ever interested in entertaining anything to do with productivity and having workers responsible for getting better at things, for producing more, for having conversations about performance and being more productive. They've never allowed companies to do this, right? Now, I think it's a bit rich that for them to do that for decades. And let me go back for a second here. A few years back, I was at Hobart, the National Industrial Relations Conference, and Liam O'Brien, who was Assistant Secretary of the ACTU, right under Sally McManus. Josh Bornstein, the lawyer from Maurice Blackburn, who won the Qantas case, and he's a very well-known lawyer in the IR space. Tony Burke, you name it. There are a bunch of people involved with that day, and those people are named Liam O'Brien and Josh Bornstein, and others on that day. Those presenting made employers in that room feel like an absolute pathetic joke, laughing, making jokes about productivity, rolling their eyes about productivity. Laughing in the faces of companies, employers struggling to survive, wanting to have one topic entertained in the creation of enterprise bargaining agreements, one clause inserted into a 50-page EBA that favoured unions and employees, one clause that said we can talk to you about productivity, right? Didn't give an inch, right? Did not give an inch. I find it very rich these days now that these bodies right? These union bodies that don't pay any tax, mind you, that produce no jobs, pay no tax, create no projects, right? I find it very rich that they're now going to beat their chest, stand up and block employers from finding productivity elsewhere. When for decades, employers tried to work with you. They asked you to come to the table. You came to a productivity roundtable and said, let's work less. Let's have more days off. That's what you said, right? They've tried and tried. They've gone to false consultations with the Labor government, the Jobs Summit back in 2022 or 2023, whenever that was, and the second one last year, the Productivity Roundtable. What a complete farce all that was, right? Now you want to say, no, now you've got to pay us if you take up productivity measures elsewhere. Get your head read, really. I mean, come on. In any case, let me propose something here, right? Because I'm not going to be sitting here and poo-poo all their ideas. The union are right about something. People need to be helped, and people are going to be affected. And the most likely to be affected on the larger scale is the administration level and system data and system-focused people, right? Now, the Clerks Private Sector Award covers about 2 million people, right? All that work that's done under that award pretty much is going to be covered by AI in very quick time, right? Now, the union will have you thinking that we now have to have all these new laws. Some of the things they're trying to push for is 6 months paid notice to any employee who gets impacted by AI, right? Now, 97 or more % of employing companies out there employ less than 19 staff, right? They're struggling like you wouldn't believe. They can't find good people, and they also can't get people to work more and get more productive, even though all their costs at every single angle have increased, incredibly. The cost of wages, the cost of supply, the whole supply chain, the cost of rents, the cost of insurance, the cost of power, everything. It's all gone up at the same time, right? And consistently for a number of years now. Now, if that small business employer went to the workforce that was unionized and said, let's talk about productivity, they got the middle finger put up back in their faces. And that's been happening for a long, long time. Now, they've got a technology solution to try and get some cost back down so they can survive, so they can keep their people employed. Now, what you want to say is if that decision affects one of the employees, I have to pay them 6 months' pay. No, right? That's the answer. No, don't do it. They're talking about introducing legislation. They're talking about making it impossible to change a roster without giving at least 2 months' notice if there's been an impact by AI, right? So these are the only weapon that a union knows what to do, right? They know how to have fights, they know how to disagree, they know how to disrupt, and they know how to strangle a company by getting their ALP friends to create more laws. All those laws will do, if applied, so 6 months pay for an AI impacted employee, and 2 months notice before you can change a person's roster. It could even be 6 months notice. I'll have to check on that. All these things do is make it impossible for companies to keep people employed. Am I going to go and hire someone to do a project for me for 2 months, 3 months, or even more? If I know that on the horizon, I'm going to adopt technology. As I grow, I'm going to have more technology come on board. But if I have to now pay 6 months pay to someone just because I adopted a subscription to an AI tool, I'm not going to hire those people. I'm going straight to the technology right now, right? So let's not do that, hey? Let's keep people employed. Isn't that what the job of the union is to do? Yeah, I may be wrong there, but I thought their job was to keep people employed, keep people safe, keep people earning good money. What are you doing, right? But let me say what I think is a far better idea. There has to be some sort of group, right? Let's call it a task force for lack of a better term, right? People who know and understand what AI is, how it can be adopted, and the potential speed of uptake, right? That's a big thing, right? Because if you were to believe these people who are scared of AI are telling you what's going to happen, right? The doom and gloom scenarios that are out there, and there's non-stop stories of those. It means that overnight, like that, all the jobs are gone, right? It's just not true. Our energy infrastructure can't even handle that. They couldn't handle 1/10 of that story being true, right? So the uptake is the other side of the story, right? Just because technology can do something and can evolve to be something doesn't mean the uptake will allow it. Doesn't mean that our energy systems and infrastructure can even stand it, right? It doesn't mean that. So we need people who aren't scared of AI, who know the infrastructure around it and the uptake like a potential. We need them to be advising governments, not their union friends waving millions of dollars in their face saying, I'll donate to you to help you stay in power, but you have to make these new laws, strangling companies even further, right? That can't happen. The immediate thing should be, yes, I agree, there should be some sort of support to administrative staff, software engineers and developers as well, I guess, but the first cabs off the rank is going to be administrative and clerical staff. Now, some of those people can be used to deploy AI into companies. The more intelligent of those group of people. When I say intelligent, I mean the more adaptable. The ones who understand AI, can use AI, should be advocates for AI adoption in their businesses and remain employed. When I was in BHP Billiton, for example, there was a global 150,000 employees globally or something, 100,000, whatever it was. There was a global system, operating system update or upgrade, right? Now, the HR team in Australia, in Queensland, in the coal business, was the first to go live with it. We had to implement it across all the organisations, right? So our role shifted and changed. That's what should happen with these people who are immediately impacted. The initial group of people need to be trained to be not just adopters, but to roll it out in companies, to be specialists in the rollout, refocus them to learn what's happening because it's their job that's being automated. Show them how it's being automated, show them what it can do, teach these people what it's all about, and have them go back into their businesses and train every other sector as technology develops along the way. How do these other departments, how these other functions, how do they pick it up? How do they deploy it, right? Now, that's one option for a portion of that group. The others, there have to be some sort of other solution, right? But it stops there. It's just them. Because as we go on, we don't know how fast the uptake's going to be, but as we go on, technology will change and new jobs will open up. New ways of doing things will open up. New ways of deploying human resources will open up. We cannot the knee-jerk reaction and just go out and make all these new laws that all of a sudden make people less employable. That's the wrong way to do it, and it can't happen, right? Now, let's talk about one other thing that's going to impact this area rapidly as well. The Australian Labor Party, the unions, and the Fair Work Commission, all three are trying to get people to work from home. They're trying to build in the right to work from home, the legal right to work from home, right? Not the right to request working from home, the actual legal right that you will work from home, okay? The Fair Work Commission President, Justice Adam Hatcher, of his own will, of his own whim, went and run this whole case in the commission. It's there, it's live now. They're talking about what model term to write into the clerk's award, that clerical award, about giving people the right to do their job from home, right, to not come to the office, okay? The Victorian Labor Party is doing the same thing. Now, that's a farce. I don't think that's going to even be constitutionally lawful because they don't have any IR powers, right? The Fair Work Commission, the federal system, owns the legislation and jurisdiction around flexible working. The Fair Work Act itself states that any conflict between a state legislation and the federal overrides it to the extent of the conflict. So depending how the Victorian government even attempt to try and roll this law out, it's not gonna work, right? They've done this before as well. So and it failed. They didn't fail. They actually dropped their case when it went to the High Court. They didn't see it through. So I don't believe the Victorian Labor Party is even going to achieve that. But let's just watch that and see. I think June or July we'll know more. But the Fair Work Commission, nonetheless, has a case running right now to write into legislation the law for clerical workers to work from home. Now, the cost of the clerical worker, the threat of the union movement making employers pay 6 months' pay for clerical workers if they get impacted, plus the adoption of AI rapidly picking up. Are our regulators supporting us or not? I say they're not. Right? They're just making it more and more unattractive, actually impossible almost, to employ people in these jobs who are going to be impacted. Right? All of a sudden, you don't see your admin staff anymore. They're not here. You don't see them. You don't work with them. Give us some time, a few months, 6 months. Eventually, you're not going to use them. I guarantee it. You're not going to use them because you're going to be exposed to new technologies. Right, you're going to be exposed. You're going to be forced to be exposed to it because your admin team isn't there. You can't rely on them as much as you used to. Things are going to be very different when they're not working with you and they don't even want to come and sit and work with you. And you can't make them, right? I mean, poo-poo that all you like, but the reality is business owners are going to go elsewhere. It's going to happen. So let's just be a bit more intelligent about that, shall we? Right? On one hand, I agree with the union movement and the Australian Labor Party that people, first off, people should be able to work from home when they can do it and when the business agrees with it, right? I don't believe they should be writing laws that tell a company how to design their workforce. That's ridiculous. That shouldn't happen. I do agree with the union movement when they say that people who are massively impacted by the AI technology have to have some sort of pathway, plan, support. Yes, but I don't agree that equals new laws that strangles businesses, that makes businesses pay even more money they don't have right now. I don't believe that. So, it's interesting, isn't it? There is an attack on employers that's just ramping up. And when fear comes into it, for example, AI, these players aren't intelligent enough or aren't sophisticated enough to stop and have a breath and go, hang on, what I'm doing here isn't helping. Right? It helps me beat my chest, which is my business model. My union mindset is to fight and to cause disruption and demand things, right? That actually doesn't help millions of clerical staff. Doesn't help them at all. So have a breath, sit down, have a cup of tea, have a quiet word with yourself, and let's start the conversation again. That's my want and wish and desire, because we've all got a role to play in this and we should be avoiding as much heartache as possible. So look, that link again, www.hrcartel.com. Go there, click on contact us, send us a message, 075651 0066, call the advice team. If you've got concerns about anything that we've spoken about in this episode, reach out, right? Reach out. Speak to people who know what the hell they're doing. Okay? Like I said at the start, if you're offended by this podcast, good. Tell me all about it. If you're not offended by it, good as well. You're in the right place. Let's get the conversation going. Let's keep it going. Until next time, keep a tight workplace. We'll talk soon.